Welcome out, Bruin fans. Christmas came early this year as one of the biggest commitments in UCLA history officially in the books. Dante to LA officially realized, ladies and gentlemen. One of the biggest flips maybe on the West Coast in terms of recruiting since DeAnthony Thomas flipped from USC to Oregon in 2011. I mean, this is as big as it gets. The number 3 and number 4 players overall, respectively, at Rivals and 24/7 Sports. You couldn't ask for a bigger, commitment for UCLA moving forward. And I'm so lucky to be joined by my brother, the madman in the house, Jamal. What's going on? Tell me your initial thoughts and what's going through our minds today as Bruin fans, knowing that we got the guy we're looking for.
Will, it's such an exciting day, and you said it best. We're 6 days before Christmas, but Christmas has certainly come early and often for the UCLA Bruin faithful, our Bruin nation today. A huge day. We were cautiously optimistic. We were cautiously holding our breath, clenched in the body there, and felt like we were in a good spot. But, with these kids, you never know and how they're going to think at the 11th hour and whatnot. Us sort of signing Schlee out of Kent State yesterday, was a little bit of a curveball. We thought, how would this impact Dante? Maybe would it spook him or was he signed, sealed, and delivered? But we, not to sort of quote the guy from across town and Mike Bone when he quoted about Lincoln Riley, but I'm going to do it anyway. We got our guy, and UCLA is set up for success now in a post-DTR, post-Charbonnet era, and now builds this bridge into the Big Ten in an ideal way. So it's a huge day on so many different fronts, and I think it answers so many different questions and quiets so many critics, Will, across can UCLA compete moving forward consistently? Is Chip Kelly the right guy for the job? Does he have the personality to recruit? Is UCLA serious enough about football, having a perennial power in basketball? All of these questions are being answered in an emphatic fashion. And the one thing I'll take away, and I know you and I are going to get into it with some Q&A here, but I am more confident about UCLA football than I've ever been in my entire life. And I've been a UCLA football fan since I was 5 years old, since 1989. When you look at the athletic director, when you look at the head coach, when you look at key positional coaches, from a recruiting and a relatability standpoint to the modern NBA player. So from Martin Jarman to Chip Kelly to Jerry Neuheisel to Deshaun Foster to Ken Norton Jr., I've never been more confident and excited in a brain trust with UCLA football than I have been with this core five. And they keep producing resounding victories both on the field and off the field. In the words of Jerry Neuheisel, Thriller, it is a great day to be alive and be a Bruin, and I'll leave some of the profanities out.
Well, man, I almost did the water bottle celebration they do after post-game wins in my office this morning, just going nuts. And it's so timely because you open Christmas gifts in the morning when you wake up. And this, for a lot of us, are just getting up in the morning, getting our coffee, and we realize that we got our guy. Our guy is officially here, the talented five-star Dante Moore. It's so exciting on so many different levels. And I know you said you've been a UCLA fan since 1989, so I do want to ask you some questions. This has to be at or near the top of commitments when it comes to UCLA, in your fandom. What are some of the other commitments come to mind for you in terms of big and broad commitments that have altered the course of UCLA football? And where does this one rank?
Yeah, Will, there's sort of three others that really jump off the page. Four others, I will say, that this one falls right in the heart of. One was when Aikman decided to come to UCLA. Now, that was a little bit different because he transferred and he wanted to kind of get away from the OU wishbone offense over out to the West Coast. But when he decided to come to UCLA, it was a tectonic shift in terms of what UCLA could be in terms of football. There was a palpable buzz, and you could feel even across town, the SC guys were so nervous when Aikman came across town. You could feel that tectonic shift. The other one that was huge was in 93 when J.J. Stokes decided to commit. When in those days and still now, so many of the top skill guys tend to go to the SEC or the Big Ten or the USC. That sort of changed the landscape of UCLA football. And really that recruit is what set up the pantheon of success in the 90s for UCLA to beat SC 8 years in a row and for those final 2 Cade McNown years to close out the decade. It really was that Stokes recruit that set up that pipeline. And then the other 2 was Neuheisel being able to get Brett Hundley. And a lot of what's lost in the UCLA history is that Rick Neuheisel redshirted Hundley, even though it was in his best interest as head coach to play him as a true freshman. But he knew that Hundley was 5-star, Chandler, Arizona, absolute stud, wanted to set himself up for success. And Neuheisel selflessly cost himself the head coaching job at UCLA to do that. Obviously, then Mora was able to reap those benefits, 29 wins in 3 years with Hundley, 3-0 against SC. And then, of course, Rosen after that. And Rosen, there was even more fanfare than Hundley. It really felt like that lineage at quarterback was set, and it was going to be 5-star after 5-star. Obviously, things didn't quite work out with Rosen due to injury and some other things. But those are the other 4 for me in the last 30 years, and this one's right there. This one is in that group because now what this does, Will, is we have a very credible era now, post-DTR, post-Charbonnet, and we are now a destination again. That the big knock with Chip was, well, he can't really recruit. He's got to go through the transfer portal. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I've said this for months, that Chip identifies players that he believes has a predisposition to want to come to UCLA and then doubles down his recruiting efforts there. And Dante Moore came to UCLA with a lot of interest because he wanted to see what else was out there in the West Coast in terms of novel offenses, because he was so relationship oriented. His relationship with Kenny Dillingham is what enabled him to commit to Oregon so early. And when Dillingham went to Arizona State, he realized that even though Dan Lanning's a great coach, a great recruiter, that relationship between quarterback and offensive coordinator, that's like a marriage. And what these top prospects are understanding, and Dante Moore is smart enough to understand that is the relationship that I'm looking for. I don't necessarily am bothered by the facilities or the ranking. I need to know the key offensive mind and me as the quarterback. What is our relationship like? How do we see the future? And by all indications, Will, he had a honeymoon 2 nights, 3 days here over the weekend in Westwood, where Chip could just talk ball and show what an innovator he is, what an architect he is. And you get Chip Kelly in a room for 2 days and you can just talk about ball. There is not a more charismatic individual in college football than Chip Kelly when the focus of the conversation is about offensive football.
Couldn't agree more. And he has that Belichick effect where, you want to talk to him about, life or recruiting. He's very bland. He doesn't like to talk about that. But you get to the point of why we're all in the room speaking to him, which is football-based stuff. And that guy can go on and on about different schemes and variations of his offense in a way that, led him to getting the highest pinnacle of this job, which is NFL head coaching job. So totally with you on the front that no one is more brighter than Chip when it comes to that. It's very exciting to see that. And I want to say this. I think this is the biggest thing for me. And you nailed it earlier when you're talking about Martin Jarman, the coaching staff, all being aligned for success. It's one thing to have those pieces in place, but to land the coveted puzzle piece. And we know this just from being fans of the sport. Having a good quarterback can clear up so many mistakes on your team, so many areas of concern, because it's the most important position in football, maybe not even just in football, maybe in sports in general in America. So to get a quarterback that has been recruited by just about everyone in the country wants this guy, it's huge. And we've had other big commitments in UCLA, whether it's Eddie Vanderdoes, Darnay Holmes, Jonathan Ogden, different guys like these that are high caliber 5-star players, but nobody changes your team more than the quarterback position. And I think for me personally, the biggest thing, that blueprint going to the Big Ten. Big Ten is a serious conference when it comes to football. Those medium games, when you're playing your Iowas on the road or, Madison, they're doing jump around for maybe, the fifth or sixth best team in the conference. Those are very intimidating environments that tend to produce the second most talent to the next level from the SEC. So to get that guy is huge. And I want to pose you this question because I think there's a couple areas where you could see where Dante Moore wanted to come to UCLA. And I want to give you a percentage out of 100 for these three. How much of a factor was this for Dante Moore for being close to the Midwest to see his family perform, the opening of the starting quarterback position, and, just having the ability to come in and just change the surface of UCLA, having a new offensive coordinator he's aligned with. So give me out of 100%, the Midwest factor going to the Big Ten, the job starting at the quarterback position, and being aligned with an offensive genius like Chip Kelly. What are those percentage-wise for you?
I will go 80, 90, 100 because in terms of the alignment with the Midwest, I think that's huge. The kid is from Michigan. Obviously, there was a lot of conversation. I think where Dante was torn is that he is a Michigan kid. He didn't want to play for Ohio State, even though he knew that Ohio State is more quarterback friendly. And that is what it created the friction. He's like, I'm really sort of a Michigan guy at heart, but Michigan doesn't really produce the great quarterbacks under this Harbaugh system. They're more run the ball, play defense, situational football. I'm not going to be able to unleash all of my talents. I'll be damned if I go to that other school up north because I'm a Michigan kid and that rivalry means so much. So then it opened the door for where else do I go? And I think the fact that, we've talked about this ad nauseum, Will, since the move. What are the two schools that are sort of most synonymous with each other when you talk about this crossover of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten? It's USC, Ohio State, and it's UCLA, Michigan. And so for a Michigan kid, I think he saw a lot of similarities between UCLA and Michigan in terms of the values, ethics, the academics, big school, big brand, the culture, all of those things. And the fact that UCLA was going to now play Midwest football at least half the time, he was going to be very close to home. So I think that was 80. I think the playing time and playing right away was even 10% more at 90%. Because when you're a five-star, when you are arguably the best, the second best, the third best player at your position in this recruiting class, you want to be able to come in there and at least compete as a true freshman for a starting job and let it settle on the field. And I think, seeing Bo Nix go back to Oregon, I think seeing some of the other situations, I think this is also an incredible learning opportunity for Dante Moore, Will. When you look at, he could win the job as a true freshman. I think he will. I think given what's behind that quarterback room, he will. But then when you talk about the opportunity, Will, as a true freshman to go up against the likes of Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Caleb Williams in your true freshman year, there's no other conference in America that can give you that level of education as quarterback as a true freshman. Playing time is one thing, but having robust experiences on the field against elite prospects is another. And only the Pac-12 and only UCLA could have provided that. And then third is the one that takes it over the top, 100%, the opportunity to play with Chip Kelly. We have talked about, again, how important that relationship is. And when you look at what Chip has been able to get out of DTR over the 5 years, when you look at what Chip has been able to get out of this running game consistently year over year, with Charbonnet, without Charbonnet, the ability to scheme it up, I think he understood, wow, this guy's at a totally different level. This guy was the modern architect of college football. Every system now is being run as a combination of Chip Kelly's system and the air raid in college football and in the NFL. This guy is truly on the Mount Rushmore of offensive football in the history of the NCAA. And I think Dante realized that and said, man, there's nowhere else I can go. So when you talk about those three factors, Will, 80, 90, 100 for me. And I don't think there was another school that came close to having such high scores across those three factors.
And I think you're spot on, man. And I think it was, for me, I think the biggest factors for him were the starting immediately and, being able to pair himself with a genius offensive mind in Chip Kelly. And for instance, I mean, we reference he's from Michigan. The team that was actually closest to getting him was Michigan State. Like Mel Tucker, he had a job to come in there and start right away. I think that was more of the appeal. Michigan had put all their chips on the table for J.J. McCarthy a year prior, and Cade McNamara was in the mix during a lot of his recruiting. So Michigan State, ironically, was the team that he was looking at the most to try to get starting. So when you have that opening and you compare yourself with somebody that you believe in, and we saw it, man. He posted the picture of just him and Chip Kelly a week prior. It's clear there's, a lot of mutual love there already. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. And it kind of
that picture with him and Chip Kelly, the way they were holding each other and smiling, it reminded me of a picture I took with my wife 10 days ago in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I mean, there was so much love over there. I mean, they looked like they were in a honeymoon on Westwood over there. And Will, you said it best. And I think part of the opening with Michigan State, again, that opportunity to play right away, the alignment with Mel Tucker. I think Mel Tucker is just an incredible leader of men. But again, I think recruits don't traditionally, these top recruits from that area don't think Michigan State first. I think he was really torn where he really wanted to go to Michigan but didn't believe in the system and didn't want to go to Ohio State, even though he knew that was probably the right system for him. And that's what sort of opened the doors to these adjacent schools. And I'm just so thrilled we got him.
We got some comments too before we transition into our next question. Justin Martin, nice too. Don't sleep. I was a big fan of Martin coming out, but I just believe to be Dante Moore into an upper echelon class. There's a reason he committed, even knowing that the likes of Colin Shee was coming there. The likes of Justin Martin was coming there. Ethan Garbers. I mean, we haven't even talked about Garbers. This guy was one of the more solid backups, if not the best backup within the Pac-12 this year. But I do believe Dante is welcoming the competition and will likely go out there in a way. We got some other stuff. Midwest kids love the West Coast. They're going to love it even more when it's in their living room every single Saturday watching UCLA play in the Big Ten with that new TV deal. I think that's very huge. So we got some cool stuff going on. Hoping UCLA can grab Gary Bryant Jr. if he enters the transfer portal. Is that, you also cover USC for us. Is that something that's realistic? I really have not been paying attention to it. I know he sat out most of the rest of last year for Gary Bryant. Hey, man, if he's in LA and he wants to play with a talented quarterback, we got the answer for him. So I think that's big, man. Percentage chance Gary Bryant goes to the arch rival. I'll put it to you that way.
Logan, it's a very astute observation, and I think it's very credible. When you think about what SC has coming back next year with the likes of Mario Williams, Kyle Ford, Brendan Rice, Taj Washington, Gary Bryant looks like he's right on the fence. I think he's thinking about kind of getting back and competing because the true wide receiver one in Addison is now gone. But I think when you look at what is happening on the other side of town with UCLA, and this sort of opens up the larger question here, Logan, when you talk about facilities, when you talk about brand, when you talk about money now, when you talk about campus, when you talk about the intelligent brass, the brain trust, there is nothing now that USC has that UCLA doesn't have, okay? It's even. And I've never been able to say that in my life as a lifelong Bruin fan and as a native of LA and as someone that knows this rivalry in a deep and intimate way for the last 35 years. This is the first time we can truly say this rivalry is on equal footing. So you know what, Logan? That was a very astute observation. I'm going to give it 50-50. Because I think Gary Bryant Jr. has an opportunity to potentially compete for that wide receiver number 1 slot at UCLA. Who wants to be wide receiver 5 at USC when you can be wide receiver 1 at UCLA and you get the 5-star and you get Chip and you get a more beautiful campus in Bel Air and Brentwood and Beverly Hills and you get a better school and you get a more likable brand and all of those things? I mean, I think it's 50-50.
This is just the national parade. We need Madman as just the sponsor and just overall person to represent UCLA in all public speaking events. Because, man, that just got me fired up right there. The comments I got are kind of, partaking into what you've mentioned earlier. This is a huge win for the program and the Chip doubters. What does this mean for Chip moving forward? Because I think for a long time, this fan base, I mean, we talked about it in previous podcasts, that it was like 50-50 split coming into this year that Chip was either the guy or he wasn't. We've always planted our flag that Chip is the right guy. Yes, there are some defensive concerns that I'm frustrated with, like many Bruins fans. But when it comes to offense, there's no one in the country that can call it quite like Chip Kelly can. What does this mean for Chip Kelly in recruiting moving forward? Because I can only see the positives out of this madman.
Well, it's huge because it allows Chip to market his strategy and the fact that his strategy is working without him needing to get on a bullhorn and say, look at me, my strategy is working. He's not that kind of guy. Chip has created, for the first time in the history of the 21st century in UCLA football, a sustainable strategy to keep UCLA competitive year over year. And that strategy is predicated on finding the right guys that are ready to play in the transfer portal, and for those select individuals. And by select, I mean anywhere from 4 to 6 guys a year. That's the number we're talking about. Those guys that he sort of identified as guys that have a predisposition to want to buy into his philosophy of athletic, academic, spiritual, and social, he's going to double down on recruiting those guys. And that is the philosophy that's been working. He's not just going to go spray and pray like these other schools and go give out 30, 40 offers. That's not his strategy. He's going to find the guys in the transfer portal, and he's going to identify those 5 or 6 guys that he can traditionally recruit that already are looking at a place like UCLA, where if you have to convince the guy to come to UCLA, he's not the right fit. It's a very Stanford-like approach of the way he's going. Guys either want to go to Stanford or they don't. And if they don't want to go, they're never going to fit in. And he's sort of taking that ethos with UCLA. And now what this does, Will, is it shows that he can bring in a 5-star at the quarterback position. Now there's going to be potentially a lineage of 5 stars looking at this position with Chip. But what it also does is what we've called the LeBron effect. Now that you have a 5-star at quarterback, it's the running backs, it's the receivers, it's the tight ends, it's the offensive line that want to play with this guy. And then it's also recruiting on the other side of the defense. Because when you have a great signal caller and you realize, hey, all I need is 4, 5, 6 stops a game, and we're going to be in every game and we potentially can win every game, it just creates this halo effect of being able to get talent. And for Chip, it validates what he's trying to do and what he's trying to build, given the inherent limitations of what UCLA is, given what a great academic institution it is. It sets up that pipeline and momentum now into the Big Ten, and it reshifts our thinking, because the thinking presumably up until this point is this strategy is going to be sustainable and it's going to work. And UCLA is going to have a really good team every third year, let's say. And there's going to be 2 years where you're going to have to rebuild. You're going to have to build the younger guys. And that third year is that year you can compete for the conference. You can compete for those bigger prizes. What this does now in terms of being able to get these guys is basically saying, can we compete every other year? Can we compete every year for the big prizes in terms of the conference? So this solidifies for me something that I've known for a year. Chip is absolutely the right guy for the job. B, Chip is going to be at UCLA for the next 15 years. And C, Chip is going to have his name next to Terry Donahue's in the Rose Bowl press box as one of the great coaches in UCLA history. And for all of the folks that are knocking the defense, and I get it, and I hear it, I have 2 things to say there. One is the defense didn't cost UCLA the Rose Bowl this year. We had the ball against Arizona. We had the ball against USC. We had the ball. We had it on our racket to go 11-1, A. And B, this is a uniquely historic time in the Pac-12 where the offenses are just far superior to the defenses. We've alluded to it, Will. Caleb, Penix Jr., Bo Nix, DeLaura, Dante Moore, Cam Ward, all of these guys are in the Pac-12. The number 1 defense in the Pac-12 in Utah gave up 42 to SC at home. This is just not a defensive era in the Pac-12. Everyone is trying to just get those 4, 5, 6 stops a game with a great signal caller, and Chip is the absolute right guy for this job.
Couldn't agree more. And just to kind of touch on that last point, for me, the issues really are more in the secondary. there's 12 teams in the Pac-12. We finished 11th in the conference, only to the Colorado Buffaloes. I know there's great passing offenses in this conference. They got to clean that up, especially with the talent of a Kirkwood, a Davies. They got to make a coaching change, something in that nature. But I have come out and said that from this front seven that they have, in the pass rush, the linebackers, I felt this was the strongest unit that Chip ever possessed when it came there with the Mwasaus, Latu making second team all Pac-12, the Murphy twins who are coming back for more this year. Guys like those really made it a very solid unit. Just clean up the secondary. And it's a problem that, went from the entire defense to just one area. So I think they are in the midst of, turning that thing around. So I'm really, really pumped. Madman, we've kind of, talked all about it. I want to bring up one more guy while we're here. We got Spencer Huledge, I believe his name is, Spencer Holstage, the guard transfer from Purdue coming in. And I just want to read you some of this guy's accolades. 31 career starts, 2-time All-Big Ten, 3-time academic All-Big Ten. I mean, this is Chip's perfect player in the portal, books and ball, 0 sacks allowed this year. Number 1 in pass blocking guard for the Big Ten last season and number 6 in the nation by PFF. And then the number 2 pass blocker in the Big Ten by PFF. When you really pair this with what he's acquired in the transfer portal, the Heimlicher coming, from Penn, the the Cal linebacker coming from Cal with those numbers. When you pair that with some of the recruits he's getting, and he's in on one of the top 100 recruits now, a safety by the name of Roderick Pleasant, who would be a huge fit for UCLA moving forward when you compare him to last year's highest recruit, Kamari Ramsey, really getting the job to start this year. Big things are coming, Madman. And just give me your initial thoughts on UCLA acquiring a top guard in the transfer portal from Purdue.
Well, I love it because, again, it comes back, Will, to that ethos that Chip has. He's recruiting from the likes of Purdue and Duke and Vanderbilt and Penn and Harvard. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to go look those schools up in university rankings and understand where they sit. So he's going for guys with big academic pedigree, academic All-American you mentioned. And then the key element there, the second key element, Will, is experience. He's looking for those guys that have started, that have played big games, anywhere from 20 to 30 starts, been in big situational spots. And then third is specialization. And what this kid brings to the table is elite pass blocking. What Chip is looking for in the transfer portal, he's not looking for these generalists. He's looking for guys that are either great pass blockers, great run stoppers, great bump and run corners, great linebackers that fly to the ball, guys that do one or two things really, really well and have a game that's around that. And this kid from Purdue fits to that ethos completely. Academic All-American from a very prestigious school in Purdue, especially in engineering. Second, a lot of experience in terms of 30 career starts. Third, huge specialist in terms of the ability to do pass blocking. And so when you talk about how well this offensive line, Will, has evolved over the course of the 2022 season, when you look at the film versus Bowling Green, and then you look at the film versus Cal, first game, last game, those are two completely different offensive lines in two completely different stratospheres. So when you can bring a guy with this level of experience to fortify and solidify the line going into next year, he's already anticipating Dante Moore not only is going to come to UCLA, Dante Moore is going to win this job. And no matter how talented he is, he's still going to be a true freshman. He's still going to need to get used to the speed of the game. He may have some happy feet from time to time. So you really want to ensure experience and consistency on that offensive line. And then when you talk about Oladipo, again, a real stud. We don't know what's going to happen with Latu. We don't know what's going to happen with Keho. We don't know what's going to happen with Moasau. So this guy's the perfect plug-in there. Again, experience, academic pedigree, really good in terms of straight line speed to the ball. So Chip's plan is working, folks. It's working, and we are headed for some unbelievable things. All aboard the bandwagon. There's still space, okay, but the space is running out. We're closing up the bandwagon by Christmas Eve. So whoever wants to jump on the bandwagon, the train's starting to move. You're gonna have to run on like a train in India. You're gonna have to start running while it's moving and jumping on. But we got some space for you, so come all aboard the Bruin bandwagon.
Man, you just gave me images of Slumdog Millionaire there. That was awesome. What I've got for you is the final question of this live chat. You guys have been so awesome tuning in, making this such a communal experience that Dante Moore has chosen to come to the UCLA Bruins. Madman, the college football playoffs are expanding to 12 teams starting in 2024. If everything goes perfect with Dante Moore, we should have 3 entire seasons with him unless the NFL changes the rules. Over under 0.5. This is how Vegas does it. Normally it's 1. Over under 0.5. UCLA making at least 1 college football playoff at the peak of Dante Moore's tenure at UCLA.
Over, because it's going to be, here's the situation. If he is everything that we believe he is and what the rating agencies believe he is, and we certainly believe that he's going to be here for 3 years, which means that he's going to play 1 year in the Pac-12, and then he's going to have 2 years in the Big Ten. Now, if you look at what the college football playoff is going to look like, you mentioned it will 12 teams, but let's break down the composition here of these 12, right? You have 5 conferences, but in reality, you have 2 super conferences. And then you've got another 3 conferences and then the at-large. So the reality of the situation is most likely the SEC and or the Big Ten is going to get 2 to 3 bids in the CFP. Okay, where I actually see this is the SEC gets 3, the Big Ten gets 3, and then between the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12, you're going at 1 to 2, and then there's going to be 1 or 2 at large. That's going to be the general composition of the 12. So what you're basically saying is, after 1 year of experience, after a true freshman, that sophomore year and that junior year, he's got 2 cracks to go top 3 in the Big Ten. And I believe he certainly will be able to do that one of those years. I think we're going to have UCLA in the college football playoff within the next 3 years. And hey, let's go for the double. Let's win it all in basketball. Let's win it all in football the same year. And let's put the baby to bed, as Russell Westbrook would say.
Rock that baby to sleep for the entire country. UCLA fans, what a day. This is a day I will never forget regarding Dante Moore and just the communal experience I referenced with the Dante to LA hashtag that took off. I invented that with UCLA Countdown, and it was one of the cooler moments that has happened to me in the social media space. So thank you guys all for that. Bruin Bible, we're officially out, but the celebration's continuing, folks. Pop yourself a beer at lunchtime. Go grab yourself a martini. It's the holiday seasons. We're drinking anyways. Might as well do it with some fun after the news of Dante Moore coming through. Stay tuned for LA Football Network. We're going to have everything coming your guys' way. And we got a big maybe announcement coming soon about the bowl game and a live watch party. So stay tuned for that. Madman, any parting thoughts?
Well, it's just wanting to wish all of our viewers and listeners a very happy holidays. It's such a special time in everyone's lives. Wishing you all of the happiness with your friends, family, loved ones. And Will, I must give you a shout out here. I know you're dropping it in there. Let me sort of give you your flowers of being such a champion and such just a passionate advocate for UCLA football. You did a great job with this Dante to LA coming up with it. And we have to give Countdown at UCLA just a ton of credit. I mean, that account was just sort of tireless, day over day, week over week, in terms of galvanizing this audience. And so you were the Steve Jobs for Dante to LA, and Countdown to UCLA was the manufacturing, advertising, the boots on the ground, and just putting this thing together. So it really shows the power of the UCLA community. So keep watching, keep subscribing to the LA Football YouTube for all of your needs for UCLA and everything else. And just want to wish everyone a very happy holidays. And LAFB's got you in 23, so keep it coming.
Happy holidays to all. 4's up, a clap. We got to do it all, baby. UCLA, huge day. We are out of here, baby. Stay tuned for more.